This video falls under fair use. Fair use allows commentary, criticism, and reactions.
The only cards they really had left, realistically, was destroying energy infrastructure or a nuclear bomb. That's really all you had left. And if you do either of those, say goodbye to the Gulf states.
Yes.
Like, just say goodbye. They're going to destroy the desalination plants. No water. They're cooked. Summertime in the Middle East? Over. So I could only imagine, like, I was thinking about this. Imagine the Oval Office every day during the course of this conflict, like from Japan, from Indonesia, all these countries, the Gulf states, Trump, end the war. He must have had an insane amount of international pressure to end this thing, all of Europe. Now they got to buy Russian oil. Like,
right.
What's going on here?
Yeah, huge international pressure. And you're right. I mean, at the end of the day, it's like we had a set period of time where we had some options before we ran out of oil. It's just, that's really what it all comes back to, is the U.S. really underestimated Iran's ability to close the strait and sustained the closure of the strait basically indefinitely. And you have this period of time where Trump thought we could bomb them into submission. Then it was getting too costly even for us. Bombing them was too costly for us because of how we were burning through the stockpile of interceptors and the damage it was doing to our bases in the Gulf. It's just too many targets. Can't defend all of them. So then we transitioned to the strategy of the bluffing, the economic blockade. You know, we're just hoping there's some way we could trick these guys into a deal. And then, you run out of oil. That's it. You know, it's the end of the rope.
I know Trump is a very difficult person to predict sometimes, etc. But if there's someone that understands his thought process, because you've been spot on with a lot of your analysis, a lot of your predictions, you've been spot on. What do you think his strategy was? Like, let's go to February 27th. Or actually, we can even go back when Netanyahu came the 13th time to America.
Right.
And he sold Trump on the plan. What do you think the plan was? What was he trying to do? What was the strategy? What did he think was going to happen versus what actually happened?
Well, you got to go back to really December, which is Netanyahu comes to Mar-a-Lago, I think December 27th.
For New Year's.
Exactly.
Yes.
And he came there with one intention. It was widely reported at the time. He said, look, we got to hit Iran again. We got to hit the missiles. He said, because Iran is building 300 ballistic missiles per month. And what this is going to do is it's going to make it impossible for us to intervene. And if they build up their missile stockpile, then they will get to work on excavating the highly enriched uranium, the centrifuges. Then it's off to the races. So Netanyahu said, we have to go back in, mow the grass, or defeat them once and for all. Trump goes into Venezuela that first week in 2026, extradites Maduro. It's this masterful operation. No U.S. casualties. We kill 100 of their guys, scoop them up. He's feeling good. Then you have those protests in Iran where they say 70,000 protesters were killed. It's the most violent clashes ever. It's just the number just kept going up and up.
First it was 20, then 30, then 40, then now they're saying, 50, 60, 70,
We've never seen that before, right? They never, October 7th, other things, right? Like, so it's like, think of the 100,000 protesters that were killed. And what we later learned, by the way, is that those protesters in Iran, it wasn't really a spontaneous demonstration. Where were the protests occurring? It was all in western Iran, where it's all the Kurds. And anybody knows what's going on is that the Iraqi Kurdistan, headquartered in Erbil, has basically broken away from the central government in Baghdad. That's where the U.S. still has all its bases. Israel's very aligned with the Iraqi Kurds, and they share a border then with Iran. So there were reports at the time in January that there were men dressed in all black, fully automatic rifles, taking over government buildings, municipal buildings in western Iran. It was later reported about a month later that some of these Kurds were armed by the Israelis and by the CIA to cross over the border. Effectively, it was an invasion. Mm-hmm. And they were trying to stoke or spark a wider revolution. They were going to kick it off.
While simultaneously crashing the Rial.
Yeah,
which Bassett admitted that we crashed the Rial too. He did that with George Soros for years. That's how George Soros became so rich.
Exactly. It's a great point. That is a huge part of what triggered is a big currency collapse and a run on the banks. You're 100% right. And so you had these huge protests going on into the middle of January, and that's when Trump was saying, overthrow the government, and they said that they were in the air ready to go, ready to bomb Iran, but they just didn't have the aircraft carriers mobilized because they were in Venezuela. So Trump mobilized the fleet, brought the Armada to Iran. There was another round of negotiations in mid-February. Kushner and Witkoff went out there. I believe the negotiations were held in Turkey or Switzerland or something, or Oman. There's a lot of debate about where and when it was going to happen. And basically the U.S. at the end said, look, you give us everything or else we're coming.
Okay, guys, so this is Nick Fuentes, and he's speaking about the war between Iran and also USA. And he's been saying for a long time that, Israel, that they had something to do with this. So let's get back to the clip.
And it's important, too, because me and you talked, it was no enrichment, ballistic missiles neutered to like 300 to 400 kilometers, and then no funding of the proxies. Right. That was the original three. Every Zionist comes in and says, no, dude, we just want to destroy their Navy and their Air Force. I was like, dude, no. You're shifting the goalposts because you couldn't get what you wanted before. It was no enrichment. But then they're trying to say, like, no, we just didn't want them to have nukes. No, it was zero enrichment. I remember that vividly.
Exactly. Well, and that's always been the sticking point. And that was the ultimatum, as we said. And the ultimatum even went outside the negotiations, because in the negotiations, the Iranians, they won't sit if it's anything other than the nuclear file. They don't even want proxies and missiles on the table. So they say that is outside the bounds of the discussion. So Kushner and Witkoff, because Kushner wasn't even part of the negotiations last year and wasn't part of the first round in February, but he came for this ultimatum and they said, we're not playing around. No enrichment, no proxies, no missiles, no nothing, or else we're coming. The Iranians said, forget it. And then that's when we went to war. And so I think the mindset was basically a combination of exuberance because of the success in Venezuela, as well as maybe overestimating the penchant to the Iranians that they're going to be able to overthrow the government. And then I think the Israelis and Trump himself undersold the ability of Iran to close the strait, their willingness or ability to close the strait in a sustained way.
You know what the most disturbing thing was to me, man? Like, the intelligence community told him, you are not going to be able to effectuate a regime change. These guys are theocrats. This is they're not going to, even if you kill Ali Khamenei, you're not going to get the regime change you want, man. This isn't Venezuela where you can pay off the bodyguards. Like, this is different. And he went with it anyway. And I don't know what the Mossad told him during that meeting, but he clearly had to rely upon Israeli intelligence, like you said, the exuberance. And the thing that's also the most disturbing is like the diplomat guy from Oman. Like, they had met on the 27th, and they had a framework in place where it was almost like a better deal than JCPOA, where they weren't going to stockpile, they're going to get rid of sunset clauses, whatever. It was better than what Obama had in place, and they still attacked anyway. Which I'm like, oh wow! And it's like now, you can make the argument that Iran is stronger now than before.
100%. There's no question. And yeah, I think it is this influence of Israel. I mean, it was Mike Waltz was a national security advisor up until like May last year, and he's an Israeli operative, So these are the people in Central Command. These are the people in the DIA, in the NSA, the rest of it. And you're right. In the buildup to the war, I remember there were a bunch of sources going to Politico and the Washington Post from the military, basically saying regime change isn't going to happen, because that was like the tagline at the time, as Trump said, we want a decisive, definitive confrontation. We want a clean decapitation strike, knock out the regime in one go. They said it would last 4 days.
Yeah.
I don't even remember, but like that first night, yeah. They said 4 days, that's as long as it's going to go. And I guess they literally didn't have a plan B. Okay, what if it doesn't work? They close the strait and then they refuse to open it. Okay, now what? And that's literally the question we've been grappling with ever since is, okay, we crossed the Rubicon, you killed the supreme leader, you killed half the regime, you blew up all their stuff, they closed the strait, now what are you going to do? And there's nothing we can do.
You know what kills me the most? When he says, we have more reasonable people. And I'm like, the guy that's in power right now is his son. You killed his baby. You killed his family.
Yeah.
That guy's going to, like, he's more reasonable? Okay. Like, it's just insane to me because, like, they killed all the people that, didn't want a nuclear program. And then, Tulsi Gabbard goes on and says, oh, yeah, they don't, we keep assessing. They have a nuclear bomb. Obviously, she's a DNI. She has a better read on the intel than even the president. She's the one briefing him. And it's just insane to me that, like, we still went in, right? Because they asked him, I'll never forget, I think Trump was, like, on the tarmac. Like, what do you think about what Tulsi Gabbard said? She doesn't know anything. I was like, that's your DNI. Like, what are you talking about? She's the one that briefs you. Like, what are you talking about, dude? So, very clearly relied upon the Israelis and, like, the Israeli intelligence. And, what was I going to say?
Okay, so there was definitely more forces behind the scenes that wanted this war between USA and Iran, not only Israel.
And then, I know you're not a fan of Kent, but like he comes out from the DNI as well, and he's saying the same thing. And I'm like, well, these guys are, have access to some of the most classified information in the country. And they're over here saying like, yeah, this is a problem. Why are we striking? Why are we getting involved in this war? So, you got people at very high levels of government that honestly doesn't benefit them to take this position, right? You like Gabbard had to resign. He had to resign, So I don't know.
Well, what happened with Kent was really interesting. That's like a layer that not a lot of people even remember. But if you recall, I forget what week
he was
we
very
were.
pro-Israel. He was.
He was. But there's like an interesting connection there because I believe it was the middle of March. Had to have been, something like March 12th or 13th or something like that. The first government official to actually come out publicly against a war was David Sachs. David Sachs, who is very close with J.D. Vance, very close with Peter Thiel, very close with Elon. David Sachs is extremely powerful and a connector because it was at David Sachs' house where J.D. Vance hosted a tech fundraiser for Trump in June of 2024. And that is some of the value that Vance brought to the table, which is why he became the vice president. And so Sachs is like the conciliary for Vance, Thiel, Elon, also very tight with Tucker Carlson as well. He's part of that crew. He's a PayPal Mafia guy. And, he's better than some of the other PayPal Mafia Jews. He is a Jew.
Yeah.
But
every time.
And it's literally every fucking time. But so he was the first one to come out. He's the AI czar. And now the thing about that position is because of some statute, you can only have that position for 180 days or something like that before you go.
Because it's not confirmed by the Senate,
Exactly,
right?
Exactly. So he was headed towards that time limit expiring. He was on his way out. Then he got put on the Science Council, I think, about a few days later. But he was the first one to come out and say the war in Iran needs to stop immediately. That was on a Saturday. Then it was literally a few days later that Joe Kent published his letter as the head of counterterrorism. The following day, he went on Tucker Carlson and did this big interview. And I said, wait a second. So you got David Sachs, Joe Kent, Tucker. You got this triangulation of people that are now criticizing the war from inside the regime. Kent was backed by Thiel in 2022. When Kent ran for Congress in 22 in Washington's 10th, I think it was, he got money from Peter Thiel because Kent was running in one of those Trump impeachment districts. Back in 2021, there were 10 or 11 House Republicans that voted to impeach Trump. Peter Thiel made it a mission to primary every single one of those people, and Kent was running in one of those districts. Kent was in the CIA. He's a CIA officer, right? So I saw this triangulation of Sachs comes out first, then Kent goes on Tucker. What do these three people have in common? They're all J.D. Vance guys. Now, this war puts Vance in a really bad position because I think everybody saw where this is going to go. It's going to lead to an economic collapse, an energy shock, high inflation.
All right, now, so appreciate you guys for tapping in with me. And the clip I just showed you guys was Myron Gaines, Nick J. Fuentes, and it was on the Fresh and Fit podcast. And they were speaking about the war between USA, Israel, and, Iran. And they were also speaking about Donald Trump. And what they were discussing was basically, behind the scenes stuff. And according to not only Nick Fuentes, but a lot of big internet personalities, they're saying that not only Israel was behind this, but other countries as well. If you ask me, I think that the reason why they did this, USA, is because they wanted to starve Iran out of oil, because they sell oil to other countries, especially to China. And since China and USA are competing, they wanted to basically stall their their power that they were about to get. So that's the reason why USA decided to attack Iran, if you ask me. So actually, want to know what you guys think about this. So make sure to like this video, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next videos.